HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. We're a member-supported food radio network broadcasting over 35 weekly shows live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. Join our hosts as they lead you through the world of craft brewing, behind the scenes of the restaurant industry, inside the battle over school food, and beyond. Find us at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by MoFad, the Museum of Food and Drink, inspiring public curiosity about food. Learn more at mofad.org.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is Michele Chappell. We'll talk to Michele about Beaujolais, Gamay, Domaine Chappell, and a lot more. We'll taste a Juliana.
What? Juliana?
For our weekly wine sip. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. American sommelier turned French winemaker Michele Smith Chappell worked in New York's finest restaurants, including Per Se and Brooklyn Fare, combining for, at some point, 6 Michelin stars. She met David Chappell in Beaujolais, got him to move back to New York, and both eventually packed up and moved back to France.
Indeed.
To make wine. Michele Smith Chappell is the proprietor, with her husband David, of Domaine Chappell in Beaujolais. Michele, welcome to the Grape Nation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. We are pre-Beaujolais Bash, which is part of La Paulée, and we are in the hotel lobby of the Beekman in downtown New York, so you'll hear a little noise in the background. Michele, let's give our listeners a little context of who you are. So give us a little background on your journey in life in wine that got you to your current position, which is with David, owning a domain in Beaujolais.
Yes, it's been a long journey, taking me many places, but currently living in Beaujolais, but I was born and raised in Connecticut. When I was 18, I moved to New York to go to school at Pace University, which is about a block away from where we're sitting right now. So this was my first neighborhood in New York. It feels like a lot's changed. Started working in restaurants while I was going through school, and I eventually made it to Per Se with the idea that I wanted to work in wine, and I was quite young, and once I got there, I realized I had a whole lot more to learn than I thought.
When you got to Per Se, you didn't get there for wine. You just got...
It was a goal. I wanted to be on the sommelier team.
Okay. But you first have to get into the door.
Exactly.
And work. So that's what happened.
Yes.
Okay.
And
so what year was that about when you got to...
2006.
Okay.
I think it was just shortly after they had
opened.
Okay.
So you get to Per Se.
And I stayed there for about 4 years, but working through different positions, and eventually made it to the wine team as assistant sommelier.
Just out of curiosity, how long had Per Se been open?
If I remember correctly, they were open in 2004.
So only a few years.
Yeah, The way the timing worked out, it was about a year. It was like their sophomore year of opening, but
Right.
maybe at like the extremes. But yes, somehow it worked out that way.
So you work your way up to assistant sommelier.
Yes, yeah.
Who was the head som?
When I started there, it was Andre Mack,
Okay.
who I learned so much from like grace and style, and he was really an accessible person.
And Andre now has his own wine label,
Andre's
right?
killing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's actually, we're actually going to meet up at the Charleston Wine and Food Festival. He's going to be a
Fun.
guest.
Great.
I'll tell him we sat together. All right, so you spend how long at per se?
A little under 4 years.
Then what happens after 4 years?
After 4 years, I left. Took about a month or two to take a break. It was a pretty intense work schedule there, so I took a little time off, and then I applied for a position at Brooklyn Fair. At the time, I was in downtown Brooklyn.
Right.
I was in either late 2009 or 2010, like right around that time.
What compelled you? What did you know about it? Was there a buzz about it then?
No, it
or-
was not known. It was.
It wasn't.
I mean, it was known by a few individuals who really like seek out restaurants, and that were
Right.
that the buzz was there, but on a micro scale, But there were
Right.
certainly people, and within that
It
community,
was unrated at that point.
it was completely unrated. There was no reviews.
Okay.
There
No,
was
no.
no review, and it was quite different than how it was after that. It was at the same time. It was just like a prep kitchen, and it was Cesar Ramirez, the chef, and a small team. There was one other person helping him cook and plate and do the food, and it was a very low key operation, but ran at an excellent level.
So let's make a quick comparison. So you get to a place like Per Se, which is, a hallowed
Yes.
Michelin-starred restaurant.
And very intimidating when I was
Intimidating.
young.
The
but-
wine program
Yes.
is somewhat established. There's
Yes.
bottles, trophies, and all of that.
Yeah.
You have the luxury, fun, and opportunity to be part of that at every level. Then you come to Brooklyn Fair, and it seems like it's...
Well, there's nothing at the time. It was a BYOB
So you-
restaurant, which made it
You
pretty
put
special.
that was my question. You put the list together?
I did, yes. It took a little while to get the wine license. It was delayed
Okay.
by about a year and a half. So when they opened, there was nothing. It was all BYOB, and it remained that way for about a year and a half after. And even through
But
that
you
time,
were working towards permits and
Yes,
establishing
yes.
Were you buying wines at that point?
No, you can't buy anything.
Oh, right.
I was putting the list together always
Right.
in like meeting with.
Frustrating.
I was meeting with wine reps, and I was going to visit wineries, and I was tasting, and I was going to portfolio tastings, but it was just with this hope that we
Doing
would
all the wine
actually-
stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a scramble at the end too when we finally did get the license, which was incredible. The feeling of finally, but then it was the middle of winter, and everybody was basically on vacation because it was right around Christmas. So I had already scheduled a trip to California as a tasting trip, but I had to come back early to really get the list together for the reopening.
So
it was a scramble.
How
And it was a 3-star restaurant at the time. It had gotten 3-star Michelin in the time.
before they had wine, a license, and a wine program?
Yes, yeah.
So
it was a
now
wild ride.
you're
This
tasked
restaurant beat every
with
possibility.
pairing or establishing a wine list to Caesar's cuisine, which was
Yes, but over the years, so I mentioned it was BYOB, so at the time we were pretty lucky where people were coming in and bringing their own collection because they wanted it to match the food, so they were bringing really incredible wines, and these were things that I wouldn't have had access to had
Right.
I had purchased. These are old vintages of wines, and really just remarkable, and it was a beautiful time. It was quite unique.
So did you have a little budget? Were you able to start buying?
Once the program was
Yeah.
in, I would say the budget was flexible. The owner, who's still the owner,
Right.
he gave a lot of freedom and flexibility both to Cesar the chef with the food and the ingredients he was
Right.
using, and myself also. There weren't too many limitations.
Right.
I limited myself, but we had a lot of freedom.
So you spend time at Brooklyn Fair. They eventually move into the city. I think they are still a 3-star
But it was still in
restaurant.
Brooklyn when I
Yeah,
by the
no,
time
I know.
Yeah,
But
it's still 3 stars. Yes.
Yeah, it
yes,
still
yes,
is
yes.
3 stars.
Different location now. but-
Right. But you move along and move out of there. Why?
Why did I eventually leave the position?
Brooklyn Fair, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was there for about 5 years working the floor, and then for the last part of it, for the last several months, I was working on opening the new restaurant in Manhattan.
Okay.
And putting the wine list together there, and then my now husband, David Chappelle, he and I decided that we would, at that point in our lives, our careers, that we would move to Beaujolais and start our own project, our own winery, and we would.
All right, so
farm it.
we set up part of your life. Now you mentioned something which is another important part.
Okay.
While you're working, you meet a guy named David Chappelle.
Yes, I met him in Beaujolais.
Just tell me that story quickly, because that's critical to who and what you are, what you're doing.
It was a point. It was a point that changed the trajectory, I would say, of what was happening. I thought I would live in New York forever. I had moved here in the year 2000.
Right.
I thought I'd always be here. I love New York. But yes, things changed then. And it was 2013, and I was in France on vacation, but tasting.
Pleasure.
Yeah, but always when I had
You're always looking
a little
around.
bit of vacation time,
Right.
a little bit of vacation time, I would always go tasting, usually in France. So I had about 10 days, and I set up a tasting trip from the Rhone, and then it was going to end in London. So we tasted everywhere in between, like Burgundy, Champagne, Paris. But on the second day of the trip, after I had met in the Northern Rhone with Hervé and Béatrice Suot, I was coming to Beaujolais, and I had one tasting appointment, and it was at Domaine Lapierre.
Which is a legendary Beaujolais maker.
Of course, yeah.
Good stop.
Really, in all credit to Marcel Lapierre, who was really at the forefront of everything and made so much possible. It made what we're doing now today possible. Right. So, yes. So I was really looking forward to this tasting, and unfortunately we got there late. And Mathieu, the winemaker, had already left because he had to go pick up his daughter. And so I left him a note and just said that we would be in Ville-Morgon. We have nothing else planned. So if it, with huge apologies, but if it was at all possible, we would love to still do a tasting at any point in the day. We'll meet him, and he did end up contacting us, as there's one bar in Ville-Morgon. So he figured out where we were, and he called and he said, I can't come, I have already left, but I'll send an employee for my domaine. So as we're waiting, we had a quick lunch, a couple glasses of Beaujolais, and then David showed up, as he was working at Lapierre at that time. So
right.
He was the employee. So voila.
So he shows up at your tasting, and
he came to pick us up, to bring us back,
pick you up,
to
right.
bring us back to Lapierre for
but
the tasting.
It's sort of the rest is history line, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys just spent the next.
But I go back with it now. I told him, okay, I knew, I knew immediately. I had this feeling immediately as soon as I met him. I was like, oh wow, it's hard to explain, but it's a feeling. It's almost like when you taste a wine and it's so compelling, and you just have that, you have that moment, and you're like, wow, this is something impactful, and that's the moment I met him. I felt that way. So but he says he didn't feel that way, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, sure. That's why he followed you around for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you get him to come back to New York because you're here.
He came with me for the rest of that trip. So that day we met and we spent the day together, and actually important to note. So I had a tasting. I was trying to set up a tasting that day at Domaine Foyard with Jean Foyard, and he would not take it. He would denied my visit.
Why? Because he's a Lapierre guy or something?
Maybe because I didn't speak French at the time. I don't know. It's Jean, he makes his own decisions, and I respect that. But I couldn't get into Foyard, and I really wanted to taste there. And so I told David the story, and he's like, oh, well, we can just stop by. Let's just go. It's like, wow, this guy's so cool.
Right.
This guy is amazing. So we went there. We had some drinks at Foyard. It was a magical day. It was pretty incredible. So after that, he followed me, or for the rest of the trip, he came with me. Yeah, we went to London, and then he had to go back to work at Lapierre, and I had to go back to work in
But you got him to come to New York?
Well, he came to visit a month later, and then when he was here, we decided that he would move to the U.S. so we could be together and try to make it work.
And you were here together for a few years, right?
Yes, yeah. Then we stayed for another couple of years here.
Then what's the moment where you decide, let's go back and do something?
I don't even remember, really. I don't know. I think it was something that was building, and
okay.
I don't remember actually the
moment. So you decide to go back to France.
Yes.
to Beaujolais.
Yeah.
With the intention of.
To set up our own domaine, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
We wanted to
So
farm our land.
that
and-
was what year? We're not.
2015.
Right.
We
We're
left
not-
in just the day harvest was starting around there, like September 2015.
All right. So a little further down the show, we're going to talk about the domain and really what's going on there. I want to ask you a few other things. Why the shift away from fine dining to do this?
I guess we just like challenges, and we wanted to, or certainly I do. I enjoy change in scenery. I like things to be new, challenging.
Did you have enough of the floor and the hours and all
for
that?
sure. That also,
That
yes.
was another.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I mean, could you imagine being a pregnant mom doing that?
No, I mean, I have so much respect for
The people who do it.
Yeah, and just the actual the strength it takes and
Right.
the endurance, and there's
So-
a lot you have to
Time for a new
do.
challenge, change of scenery.
Yes, exactly. And
Okay.
I always had this idea since I was maybe like a younger sommelier that I wanted to live in France. I in Beaujolais, when I went to visit, that was the first time in 2013 that I had visited Beaujolais. I had been to France many times. but
Ever to Beaujolais in
first-
13.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And
You
I really just
obviously were
loved it.
taken aback by it.
I loved it, and Beaujolais
Yeah.
is one of the most beautiful places in the world, like for everything, for the landscape, for the culture, for
Was
the wine.
there anything you did at Per Se or at a Brooklyn Fair that prepared you or helped you in what you're doing now?
No,
I mean,
I'm learning still as I go.
You
No,
are.
no, there's nothing
So
to
it was
prepare
like
you
two
to.
different parallels. I mean,
Yeah,
you were
there's-
involved with wine. This is wine.
I'm still
but this-
learning. I get
okay.
schooled every day. I get schooled every day in every aspect of life, but especially
So,
in
on a
winemaking.
general term, what are the most obvious changes you've gone through, and what are the challenges? I guess learning, but
Yeah, to learn another language, you have to communicate in a language. You're not always able to express yourself the way you want to. That was a challenge. We have twin daughters that are 2.5 years old. That's, I'd say, having, two kids at once.
starting a business.
Exactly. We did all of that at the same time, too. It's like buying the house, winery, starting the winery, kids, the wedding. Like,
I mean,
so we
David-
definitely packed it in. We
David's
could've
been
did easier.
around it, but it's sort of like a mom. Sort of how to be a mom, but you really don't.
Yeah, you learn on the
sort of
job.
know how to open a
Seems like that even now I'm a mom, but I'm learning every day. You learn every day.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I thought maybe you'd get a little more out of your past to help you with, your current thing. But it really is,
Let's say tasting ability.
Yeah.
Tasting ability would be the number
Which
one
is
thing,
important,
and-
because
yeah.
ultimately you're putting a product out.
Yeah.
All right, so you obviously have a love for Beaujolais, the region,
Enormous.
and I guess the Gamay grape.
Yeah, I definitely believe in the excellence of Beaujolais and just how it can be expressed in that place, how it's very unique and the
Why
different
not?
terroirs.
You never were drawn to Pinot Noir, let's say?
Oh, of course,
or
no. I love Burgundy, and this is the basis of my knowledge as a sommelier.
Right.
And Burgundy was and remains one of my first loves in life. Of course, this is.
All right, so we have
my
to.
education.
I brought up Burgundy. We have to dispel a few things. What I want to do is let's talk a little about Beaujolais.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it as the region and the grapes, the terroir, the climate, just so people know where you are and
Oh, sure, so,
what they're doing there, and then we'll talk about the domain and all of that. So give me a little primer on the region.
Well,
So Beaujolais. Is or is not Burgundy?
Beaujolais is not Burgundy.
Okay,
Beaujolais is,
you're emphatic about that.
Beaujolais is Beaujolais, and it exists on its own, completely separate from other places. It has its own magic, and I think when I was younger, or as everybody does when you read books, and still today, you'll find the same sort of narrative where Beaujolais is southern Burgundy, and it's not. It shares the same department. When you are north of Romanèche-Tours, or if you're south of Fleury, you're in the Rhône department, Rhône the 69. And if you're north, where Moulin-à-Vent would start, in the town of Romanèche-Tours, then you are then in Zone Noire. And this shares the same department with Burgundy, but aside from that, there's, I think more of the connection that people talk about is because it's written over and over. But if you
Right.
are there,
So you're one of those
cépage,
guys,
The grapes
Beaujolais-
are different.
Right, Beaujolais ain't Burgundy.
No, it's
Okay.
completely separate. It's
All right,
it's
so
its own magic.
that's the location. I mean, it actually is closer to the Rhone than
It is,
the
and
hearts of
the
Burgundy.
culture is closer to the Rhone also. But
Right.
it's close to Lyon, it being about 35, where we are in Renier-Dorette is about 35 minutes north of Lyon.
So
the
let's
culture's-
talk feel and climate, temperature. I mean, it's a temperate region.
A lot warmer right now than New York.
Yeah, well, you got stuck with the snow, but you're not.
Yeah, this year's
it's
very
not
mild,
totally
too.
foreign to you.
Last year was brutal. This year is mild, but there you get a lot of fog. It's rainy. It snows a little bit, but more up in the mountains. Yeah,
Do you
it's
get a
pretty
little
mild.
Mediterranean influence or not? Really?
You can certainly feel when the wind comes from the south. You get the Mistral, and it comes in. It's very heavy, and it brings warm wind. Yeah, like last week we were working in Charroux in the vines, and I was in a t-shirt because the wind was coming from the south.
Do you listen? You've done a handful of vintages, but do you think or sense from talking to people that any kind of climate change or global warming has an effect on harvests and timing?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you see now, and you'll definitely warmer vintages. You saw with 2015, which was it was
vintage,
a
right?
very hot vintage, and even the best winemakers who had seen many vintages before that had a hard time like controlling what that became, and it was very high alcohol. It brought a little instability to the wines, and Brett was a large issue that year, where it's coming in possibly on the grapes but with like the higher pHs, it definitely took effect of the wine.
Then when you go to the next year, give me the
And then
difference
16 was
in-
rich also, and 17 again. So, but certainly not at the same level of 15. 15
But
was.
15, a decent vintage though, right? For the end product?
I prefer to have lower alcohol in.
Yeah.
Or at least yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody in Beaujolais is pretty happy to see the 15s out. Where in Beaujolais you tend to open many bottles when people are around. So if it's
Right.
very high
You
alcohol, the
really
party might
get
not
a
go for as
sense
long.
of what every effect had on the wines.
Yeah.
What about terroir? I mean,
Well-
there's a lot of granite, schist, sandstone. How
Certainly, yeah. Granite definitely rules. It's the bedrock. It's the mother
Rules
rock.
Beaujolais.
Yes,
Okay.
and then within the different crus, you'll see, and also within some parts of the Beaujolais Village and Beaujolais, the wines that are classified as those, which are usually more on the flatlands, but certainly in the crus, which are all up in the mountains,
Right.
You'll find granite. It's pink granite is everywhere, but definitely,
granite.
yeah, pink granite, yeah.
Cool.
But from that, there is a lot of soil diversity, and there's recently been a lot of studies and a lot of digging around to find out exactly what those terroirs are, because it has not been as defined as Burgundy. While Beaujolais has less resources than financial resources and than Burgundy does, so it doesn't have the same extensive research yet, but it's happening.
And within Beaujolais and within all that pink granite and other stuff, there are different regions. I mean, there are cru regions, right? I think there's 10 cru regions.
Right now, yeah, in Beaujolais there are 10 crus, which are villages that are given an elevated level, have been throughout time maybe proven to produce wines of better elegance, finesse, deliciousness. So
I mean, we don't have to name them all, but
No.
Morgon, which Foliard is
Fleury
in.
and Morgon
Fleury and
would
Morgon
be
are there.
the most well known on the Rhone department. Yeah, my husband and I live in Renier-Dorette, and then there's one more.
Regie.
Yeah, and a bunch of accents in there.
Right.
Regie, and then slash Dorette. Yeah.
Question: of the 10 crus, a majority of the wines are made in a handful of the crus. True?
Oh, sorry, what are you?
There are 10 different crus.
Yeah.
Morgon, Fleury. Aren't a lot of the wines that are produced in the region made in a handful of those crus? Like a lot of wine comes out of Morgon, and
Sure, yeah.
there are regions where there's not a crus where there's not.
Yeah. There's a lot of Beaujolais is still pretty small. You can drive through all of Beaujolais
Right.
where the crus are up from like Saint-Amour, and you can drive all the way down to Montprouy, and it would take like half an hour. So it's a small region, but it's definitely densely planted. And you talk about the Beaujolais vine, which is a high density planting.
Explain
so
what that
a lot
is.
of the land is covered.
It's spelled goblet.
Yeah,
or
like Beaujolais, yeah.
Beaujolais, and that's the way the vines are planted, right?
It's the way that they're trained, which is a freestanding vine, where
Okay.
it's not on a trellis. So it's a freestanding. Sometimes it's called bush vines. You'll see hear
Right,
that
right,
more
right.
often in the United States.
And you'll see that all through Beaujolais.
Yes, there's a little that are trained on vines, but basically when you're
Right.
driving through, the majority, yes, is
Right.
in Beaujolais.
Now, before we talk about Chapelle, just talk to me a little about the Gamay grape. It's a thin-skinned grape.
It can be.
Is it a hard
It depends on where it's
grape
planted,
to
also.
mint? I mean,
No, in
or-
Gobelais, Gamay in Gobelais is really ideal. It can, depending on where it is and where the vines are situated, but you'll get a grape that shows flavors, also depending on the vinification.
Right.
Because there's a large variance. It's kind of hard to say exactly
Right.
what it is, but you get a lot of fruit flavors from it.
It's a low
high-
tannin grape, would you say? Lower?
Depending on the vinification, but yeah, if you are doing it in, say, semi-carbonic vinification, like we do at our Domaine, and then you will have a
There's
grape
good-
and a wine with the texture of white wine and almost.
Good acidity, too,
And
right?
yes, high acidity to
Right.
balance it. So it's a bright, fresh wine. That's
I guess now's a good time. Tell me what carbonic maceration is, because it's very prominent in Beaujolais. It's
Yes.
part of the winemaking technique. Just
and
explain
then,
what
and
it
then
is.
it's important to differentiate also because there's carbonic maceration and then there's semi-carbonic, which the majority of wines that we that you would drink, I would say, are done in a semi-carbonic way,
Which is?
where fermentation is done in the berry.
So the berries are not picked from...
No, we
It's a
harvest.
whole cluster?
We harvest everything whole cluster.
Whole
Everything's done by
cluster.
hand. In Beaujolais,
Put in
you
vats.
have to harvest by hand.
Okay.
And this is usually on slope, so it's serious work with the harvest. So the grapes are cut. They're put into small bins. I'll just talk about in our case because every domain has a different way. But in our case, the grapes are cut by hand. They're put into very small bins to keep them intact, and then we dump them directly into the fermentation vat. And that way, we fill the fermentation vat, and once it's filled, we put a bit of CO2 in the vat.
It's covered. It's sealed.
Yes,
So the
and then we
CO2
seal the vat. So the fermentation is already going to happen. It just is like a stimulus for it also. So we cover it, and then we let the fermentation start. And a little of that will be pressed juice. It's not pressed. It's like
The
pressed by its
bottom
own
stuff
weight.
from
the
gravity
free
and
run
pressure
juice.
that will break open.
Yeah, in French it's called a tiers, but it's free run juice, really. It's just
but-
from the pressure of the grapes on top of it.
So the fermentation, because of the carbon dioxide, and correct me or lead me, happens because it's a whole cluster,
So it
closed,
happens
and
in
the
berry.
CO2...
It's not crushed. We don't crush the grapes.
Not crushed. The CO2
No, because it's not crushed. That's why the fermentation happens in the
happens
berry.
in the actual berry, inside
Yes.
the skin,
Yeah.
and then it
And you can
eventually
see it,
breaks down.
after a couple, we leave it in for a couple of weeks, but you can tell too after a while if you go to, before you do the découvage, where you take the grapes out of the vat, you devat it, you can pick up a berry, and when you pop it, you can see that the ferment has happened. The color changes, it's lighter, it looks more like jelly-like. You can tell by the smell, the taste, but you still retain those fruit
I
flavors.
should know this, and I don't, but you need to tell me this. So the whole cluster is in the vat, sealed, and you pump in...
We don't do any pumps. We don't do any pump overs or
Not pump, but
Yeah.
you add the CO2.
Yes, well, it happens naturally in the grape, but but we also add CO2
Right.
through as like a tank, and then you just climb
does
to the top of the
the-
vat and put a wand in, and a small amount of
Does
CO2.
the grape break down, or you have to pull
Some
it
of it
out?
does.
You still have to...
Some of the grape breaks down by itself, but even when now you do the découvage, the devatting, it's you'll still see whole berries intact, and that's 3 weeks later.
And
So-
those just
but usually
go...
at the bottom, that would
you
be
don't
crushed.
crush them, or what? Those just
After that, we'll take everything out. You got to get into the vat and
Right.
scoop everything out by hand.
Right.
And at the time, there will be a bit of the free-run juice also, which is put to the side. And then we take the grapes that are still there and we put it into a press. We use
You do
an old
press.
traditional
Okay.
Vasselon press.
Interesting.
And we press that, and then everything goes back into the vat. We'll mix together both the free-run juice and the rest, and then the fermentation continues, making it semi-carbonic.
Right.
Part of it was in the berry, and then it continued as juice.
If someone says to you, what effect does doing semi or carbonic maceration, what effect does it have on the wine?
I think for us, we love the texture that it gives and the fruit flavors that it gives also. And
So
it still
definitely has a major effect on what you're feeling.
Yeah,
and,
definitely the
and how you
texture.
could bring the fruit out and all of that.
Definitely the
Okay.
texture of the body. But the thing about semi-carbonic is that you can still retain the sense of terroir. So you should be able
Right.
to taste it and identify
That's
where
important.
that has come from.
And most of Beaujolais does some sort of carbonic maceration, right?
Some people do full carbonic, but to some degree, there's other places will crush. You'll find a lot in a lot of wineries that are north of Fleury, so say in Moulin-au-Vent and Saint-Amour,
Right.
and Juliana, they'll do more of a Burgundian vinification,
Right.
and where the grapes will be
They'll just
crushed
crush.
and then vinified as
Right,
the
so
juice,
let's-
not in berry.
Let's take what we've learned about Beaujolais, the region, and the Gamay grape, and let's talk specifically about what you and David are doing in your domain, Domaine Chapelle. So you are located, you mentioned before, but tell us again where you're located.
In Renier-Durette, which is one of the crus. It is a higher elevation town that is just on the side of Via Morgon.
Now-
Morgon.
Isn't there a benefit to a higher elevation? I mean, I know
Certainly,
styles could vary, but I think it's sought after.
Yes, yeah, but we don't have vines in Renier. It's where our winery is and our
Okay.
home. Our winery is at our home, so it's all part of the same house.
Right.
But
Do you have property there eventually to plant? Or?
I hope so. I mean,
Okay.
I hope that we can take over the vines eventually, maybe around the house. Well, I'd like them to be farmed organically since our kids play there, and
Right.
it's our water supply. So I would
Well,
like
LaPierre
that.
was a pioneer in
without
sustainable
question.
and natural Feuillard, who you
Yeah,
mentioned.
and,
These are important guys. I'm sure David very much, is a believer and practitioner.
No, of course, yeah, and he worked with LaPierre for a while, but he grew up with them. He grew
Right.
up, sure, not
He
far
was
from
like
Beaujolais.
their other son.
Yeah,
almost.
close family friends,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
So where do
he
you-
grew up with his father was close with like Jules Chauvet, father
So
of
where are
natural
you
wine,
getting
and-
your grapes from? The first few vintages you
Well,
did.
we started in 2016,
Right.
and we didn't have our own land.
Right.
But while David was working at LaPierre, who is Camille LaPierre and Mathieu, brother and sister team who makes the wines there, and they helped us out. So they said that we can use their facility to do the vinification and also the élevage, the aging there. So we did, and that's how we started. We made the Juliana Côte de Bessay from the parcel Côte de Bessay on the northern part of Saint-Amour.
Is that a LaPierre property?
No.
You got it from someone else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
we started out in that way. In 2017 also, and we added a Beaujolais village to what we're doing from the village of Lantigny. And you were asking about the crus earlier. So now there are 10 crus in this village of Lantigny, which is on the side of Renier-Durette. Also very high elevation, beautiful terroir, decomposed pink granite, and maybe is up to become the possible 11th cru of Beaujolais. So that's a movement that's happening there. There's something to look out for. But we added a Beaujolais village. And then the following year, in 2018,
Which
just
was last year.
last January,
That was an exciting year for you guys.
Yeah, we got our own vines finally, which is
Okay.
was
Where?
always the goal. We have 2 parcels in Cherub, the cru of
Spell
Cherub.
Charoub for everybody so they know.
I hope I don't mess this up. CHIROUBLES. Yeah.
Charoub.
Yeah, so which is quite hard to say,
So
but it's
you now
a
own
beautiful
property
place.
there.
Yeah, we have 2 parcels there, which make up almost 2 hectares, a little under 2 hectares, and then we have another plot in Fleury called Charbonnière, which is also high elevation, what we focus on, and we've got a 1.2 hectare there, and this setting that's almost a natural amphitheater that is completely surrounded by the forest. It's very beautiful. You look straight out, and on a clear day, you can see like the Mont Blanc in Switzerland. And
beautiful,
it's incredible. Yeah.
So when will those wines? Have you picked them yet?
Yeah. So we took them over last year, and we started farming them.
So harvest season of 18, you brought them in?
Yes, and we vinified. Yeah.
Okay.
So we did
vinified?
all the farming for the year. We started with pruning in January, and then went through all everything.
Typically, when will those wines be released?
We're gonna release the Beaujolais Village soon. In a couple months, and then after the cruise will come after. So it depends on the temperature of our surroundings when we bottle, but we
so
hope
will
around
the cruise be around sometime in 2019 or into 2020?
No. We're going to bottle earlier, so on the earlier side for everything. So I think around June it will be in bottle. So it'll be.
So you talked about this
after.
a little, but the winemaking philosophy and how you make wines.
How do we
carbon, semi-carbonic maceration, low intervention.
Yeah, and ideally no intervention if possible. So far we've been pretty lucky.
Is there anything you do to make the wine?
We do a little. It's a pretty simple operation. We don't have like any crazy equipment, and it's just David and I who work in the winery, so everything is done. So it's a low-key operation.
It's about the terroir. It's about the weather that season.
Absolutely, it should be a reflection of that.
Yes, you know how you vinify and all of that. But it's
we're
really
looking for purity of expression of the place.
Right.
Yeah, and deliciousness. I mean, we want a wine that people want to drink in open bottles, and in Beaujolais, this is the best compliment you can get. It's a region that's very that loves to get together, likes to find a reason for a party, who likes to find reasons to eat and drink and socialize, and you want to make sure you make a wine where the people you respect are going to drink your wine and want to open up another bottle.
Listen,
this is the goal.
You've gotten good notices. I mean, there's a nice buzz on the wine, so I would say, not entirely as an outsider looking in, that you hit the ground running, which is a nice thing. There's certainly congratulations to that. One last thing. The grapes that you purchase and the grapes that you're going to grow are going to be also low intervention too, right? No pesticides, natural. I mean, that was the Lapierre way. You continue on that? Yeah.
I mean, and it's always the goal. For sure, everything that we work also, my husband and I, we work our vines organically. The vines we took over were worked in organic, and the one parcel that was not was we're converting. We don't use any chemicals. We don't buy them. We don't have them. And we work everything by hand, where you have high density plants. We do everything with a handheld plow. We work in a Troy,
really?
Yeah. So it's sort of the style of the Northern Rhone, where you'll see the handheld plows on steep slopes, and that's what we believe in. It gives you a reason to be proud of your work, and I wouldn't want to do it any other way. And
you've added hectares. I mean, are you going to have to hire some people, or is it?
Not right now.
Can you two guys?
Between the two of us, we're good right now. We're a bit at the capacity of what we can do at the moment, just as we're growing. But in the future, it's a goal. I don't think we'll ever be that big. As we like to control.
That's not an aspiration.
No.
You want to have full control and put out the type of product that.
Yeah.
What about the business part of it? I mean, you got to get it in the bottle. You got to get it labeled. You got to get it distributed. I mean. Are you the one that spends a little more time? We do
it together. Yeah, everything we do together. So, but I'm more into that side of it, I would say. So my husband David, he has less interest, but so I tend to take over those responsibilities more. Where I have less interest in doing like the racking, so he'll do that, or So
whether he likes it or not, he's doing it.
We share.
You have a good distributor, Grand Cru Selections, who's very much into, the wines and the winemakers and all of that.
Yeah, they're excellent.
I think the frustrating thing probably for them and the consumer is your output is very limited. You're really a smaller operation. But the wines are available on restaurant lists,
Yeah,
stores.
And while we don't have a lot of volume, it's not the goal. We're more for us. It's placement. We want to be on the list of my friends and people, other colleagues, people I really respect the work they do, and for that, like New York and other places in the United States, LA, and so many other places, but are just really, really like top tier wine programs that are exciting. Like I just want to drink there. There's things wines I can't even get in the Beaujolais anymore. So
I guess
unfortunate with that.
There's not a lot of negatives, but one of the negatives is that there's not enough to go around, and a lot of people want it, and you want them to have it. But that's Burgundy's been that way for a long time, and there are other wines.
We want everybody who wants it. We want everybody to have it.
Right.
It's the goal.
Right.
We don't want to be limited or exclusive, but we do make small quantities.
We're talking to Michele Smith Chappell. Michele and her husband David are the proprietors of Domaine Chappell. We talked a little, obviously, about Beaujolais and what they're doing. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to subject Michele to our wine list, and we're going to taste the Juliana, and we'll evaluate it, and we'll talk a little more about the grape and the Domaine and all that. You're listening to The Grape Nation. This is Sam Ben-Ruby. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by MoFad, the Museum of Food and Drink. Featuring a variety of interactive displays, MoFad encourages eaters of all ages to be curious about food. The museum currently operates MoFad Lab, a 5,000 square foot experimental space in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, where Chow, making the Chinese American restaurant, is currently on show. This exhibition celebrates the birth and evolution of Chinese American restaurants, tracing their nearly 170-year history, and sparking conversations about food culture, immigration, and what it means to be American. It highlights the evolution timeline of Chinese American restaurant menus, dating back to 1910, and also highlights a tasting section where participants get to enjoy tastings created by the country's most talented chefs who specialize in Chinese American cuisine. Check out MoFad's tastings and extensive event calendar at mofad.org/events.
We're back with my guest, Michele Smith Chappell. Michele, you cannot escape today without doing our wine list. We ask all our guests to answer 5 questions, and you're pretty worldly in the world of wine, so I think you should do well. So the first question is, what are you drinking now? Not the second, but what are you curious about? What's on your table? What's fun, seasonal?
We visit a lot of places that are closer to us now. Now that I would say when I used to visit France and I was a sommelier, I would visit way more places and was much more mobile. But now we have like twins that are young and while we're farm, and so we tend to visit places that are local around us. So the Jura. Burgundy, although it's been a while since I've been to Burgundy. Yeah, I love Jura. This is also
Any favorites? I mean, can you give me something specific?
I love Domaine de la Tournelle.
Spell.
Domaine de la, and then Tournelle is Tournelle. They're Jenny and Francois in New York sells them. Yeah.
Right.
But this is really magnificent work from a husband and wife team.
So you love the Jura.
Yeah. Yes.
Around the
Emmanuel and Anouillan, who make the wines under Pierre Auvernois, their work also is
terrific wines.
And can't be denied.
What else are you drinking?
Special. A lot of Gamay.
You're drinking a lot of Gamay?
Yes.
You try and drink everyone's Gamay?
It's very important, to visit with friends and see what they're up to also, and how things are going.
We didn't talk about this, and I don't mean to interrupt our wine list, but talk to me quickly about the ageability of Beaujolais and Gamay. It drinks early, but
because it has that high factor of deliciousness. It's good when it's young, and it goes back to that texture of white wine and those bright fruit notes.
But can you lay it down for years?
Absolutely, yeah.
And what happens as it ages? Do you lose the fruit? Does it round out?
It can. Of course, it's going to pick up more of the secondary notes to it, where you'll find more.
But it handles aging well.
Yes, some of the best Beaujolais can age for a long time.
Okay.
This is that's why Beaujolais is so special. You can drink it young and enjoy it, and you should because
Right.
it has the same. But
Or-
you can age it. Surely it's a complex wine, and it shows.
It's got
the
good
notes
complexity.
Of,
All right, second question. Do you, Michele Smith Chappelle, have a favorite wine and food pairing?
what have we been
Doesn't have to be
doing?
something you eat every day.
No,
but
I'm a little boring. I eat a lot of vegetables, so I've been
Okay.
vegetarian since I was a kid. So, but I would say if I had a dream pairing that I cannot get in the Beaujolais, then maybe sea urchin and champagne, Hokkaido sea urchin with maybe
know
a
what?
Georges Laval. Or, yeah.
I forgot to tell you, we have a Grape Nation rule. You can't say champagne and oysters because that's too
No,
obvious.
it's sea urchin.
But nobody's ever said sea urchin.
okay.
People have said popcorn, fried chicken, pizza.
Yeah.
So what is it? The
Yeah.
saltiness of the sea urchin, a little of the fish with the acidity and bubbly of the champagne.
Yeah, it's just
And what'd you say,
it's a
Georges
special
Laval?
flavor. Yeah, maybe a Georges Laval. Yeah.
Give me
Blanc de
another
Blanc,
maker
or-
you like.
But there are so many. I love champagne. I think we drink a lot of Jérôme Prévost right now. We do an exchange with him. So.
Okay, those are good.
But it's very difficult to find champagne in
Is it?
Beaujolais. Yes. So
Really?
we have to do exchanges with people. It's the only way it exists. Yes.
That's so funny.
I know it's another world. It's a bubble.
All right. We talked about this before, and I don't want to stump you, but think about it. Do you have a favorite wine restaurant and/or bar? And what came up before is there's not a lot of bars of
In-
Beaujolais.
in
But I
Beaujolais,
mean, in
it's
your
true, yeah.
travels,
It's-
whether it's been in New York or
I'd say the
while you're in
best-
town now, I mean,
in-
who does it well?
Recently, I had one of the most amazing meals in the 11th in Paris at Le Rigmarole, which is a husband and wife team also from New York.
What's it
And
called?
they're-
La Rigmarole?
Rigmarole, yeah.
Rigmarole.
Rigmarole. It's
Nobody's
in,
ever
in the
mentioned
11th. It's kind of new, but it's
Cool.
really incredible. They do a lot of
That's-
yakitori.
That's why we
and-
do this, for the great recommendation.
Actually, one of the owners, Jess, she used to be the pastry chef also at Brooklyn Fair, so we had known each other before.
Cool.
But her restaurant is just absolutely insane. It's one of the best.
What
in the
about-
wine program there is done by a woman, Chris Lynn, and she has put together such an eclectic list that is so well thought out, and her service is so graceful. She's really at the top of
Rigmarole.
what's happening in Paris right now.
What about your time when you were in New York? Anything left over in your mind? Good place or?
Oh, good places?
Yeah.
Oh, New York is the epicenter of.
But what's a
of-
good wine restaurant
Here,
and or
look
bar?
at Racine. There's Racine,
Racine,
of course,
which
what
is right down the
Pascaline is
block
doing
from
is-
here.
Is insane.
Give me one more.
I don't know. I feel like I'm on the spot now. I'm blanking out, but
Those are good.
no. But there's what
Racine is good, Pascaline, and Rigmarole.
Danielle. I don't know. I'm blanking out right now.
Danielle's fine. Don't struggle. I don't want you to do that. Do you have a favorite all-time wine or two, or is there something that you filed in your mind? And at the beginning, it was always like rare wines and expensive wines.
Yeah.
It turns out the answer becomes more experiential. Like we had this terrific champagne when we got engaged, blah, blah, blah. Can you think of something that, still resonates?
It's maybe a bottle of 96 Chardonnay made by Emmanuel Houillon at his home. I would say it was
96
with him and Anne.
Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Emmanuel who?
Houillon from Overnois. He's
What is that?
producing
O-U?
Houillon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and Anne,
Overnois.
his wife, they
Okay.
share the responsibilities.
That's a great answer.
That was really mind blowing to me, and it was done on a blind tasting. It was his first vintage also, and it just blew my mind because it was
Good one.
And that was more recently too. That was maybe in like
Can you-
2013 or.
Can you tell me the best wine to buy for around $15-20 retail?
Oh.
Can you give me a red
In
and
New
a
York?
white? Yeah, I think New York would be, but you get like Muscadet. We know is a good
Yeah,
wine.
because these wines
so
are
you can either
undervalued,
give
but
me a
brilliant.
category, a grape. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
give me a maker. Like, what's a great, good value wine? By the way, Beaujolais, Village is
Yeah, you can find really good like Beaujolais Village also for for
20s.
less expensive prices.
Yeah. So we could put that as the red.
Yeah. Do you mean retail though? Because I know like from
Retail.
purchasing wine, so it's a different like
Retail.
as a buyer.
Well, I'll
it's a
help you
different-
with that.
A different angle.
What kind of white?
But I think you can still find really good whites from maybe the Jura that are under
think you-
$20, but a
I
Sauvignon.
think you're right about the Jura Sauvignon, Savignin, Sauvignon, not Sauvignon. Okay.
Yeah, Sauvignon.
So let's go with a Jura Sauvignon and let's go with a Beaujolais Village.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, those are good ones.
It's for me thinking back too. I haven't been to New York in 3 years, so I'm thinking like, are these still
I know.
values? I don't know.
It's tough.
Maybe
And
now they're like
I ask
$100
that
a
question to
bottle.
everyone, and some people are more exposed to retail. Some people are less
Yes,
exposed to it.
Yeah.
But there's still wines that are, in your mind, that are great values, and that's all I'm looking for. All right, so every week on the show, we taste a different wine at the end of the show, and we call it the weekly wine sip. And I thought it would be perfect having you on the show to bring in one of your wines. And you brought in a 2017. Tell
So
me.
we did this one is it looks the same as our regular bottle. It's a 2017 Juliana from the parcel Côte de Bessay. It was our second year of production. But while there was one.
So Côte de Bessay is the parcel.
Yeah.
The parcel where the grape was
This
from.
is a southeast facing parcel just on the border of Santa Maura. It's also very steep, high altitude vines. But this particular bottle was pulled. This was a vat that we had that was from the old vine section of that parcel. So this is 65-year-old vines.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and we bottled it separately and didn't do any sulfurette. While all of our wines in 17 are unfined, unfiltered, and we bottle with a little bit of sulfur, in that year I think it gave the best expression in that way. But this wine is our Cuvée Red Wax, so it's the old vines with no sulfur at all. Well, we just
You add no sulfur.
Nope.
I know sulfur occurs a little naturally.
Of course, naturally in fermentation,
Yeah.
but no added. So we didn't. There was none in vinification, and then also at bottling we didn't because we just bottled it because we wanted to drink it. It was tasting very good. While it was from the old vines, it was tasting a bit different, like flavors of like dusty earth and rose and.
Well, let's get into that.
Okay.
Because we're gonna go color, nose, mouthfeel, palate. We're
Okay.
gonna lift the glass up. But just tell me this: when you talk about obviously low sulfur is very important.
In a way, I mean, the goal is never to do a high sulfur. I
But
don't
why
think
do
it's the best
you,
expression
like
for
you said,
Gamay,
no
but-
sulfur here?
Because we were going to drink it at home. We never planned to sell any of it. We only made about 500
So
bottles.
that was is there
Yeah.
anything in the winemaking where you say this needs a little sulfur or a little
Sure,
more?
certainly. If you need to stabilize the wine, I would
Yeah,
rather.
that's what'll determine.
It's the last thing we want to do because we want the yeast to work
Right.
on their own. So it's the last possible thing. But if we need to add sulfur during vinification to save a wine from turning into like a VA monster,
Right.
Then
So every
we're gonna add a small
vintage,
amount.
every particular,
Yeah,
the
goal is not
wine.
to, but if we need
Yeah.
to, then without question,
Yeah, I mean, you go in with a philosophy and then
Yeah.
you determine. All right, so I'm pouring the 2017 Côte de Bessay, the
Yeah.
Domaine
This one is
Chapelle.
the Cuvée Red Wax, so it's VAV, old vines, and sans soufre, no sulfur.
Okay.
And we don't write anything on the label. We just change the wax, and we won't make it every year. It's just if there is a wine that tastes particularly different, like a vat that's tasting something about it is tasting special, then we'll bottle off a little bit and wax and put red wax on it rather than the traditional gray that we use.
That's why it's the red wax.
Cuvée Red Wax.
To separate. I tell everyone this all the time. We will post your wine list answers and the wine we drank on all our social media. Our listeners that follow us can get, specific stuff. All right, Michele, let's taste the wine, all right? So we hold it up and we look at, how would you describe the color? It's a
Ruby red.
ruby red, a little
Yeah.
translucency.
This one, we don't do any pigeage or any pump
Pretty
over,
clear.
so it keeps that
It's
light color.
pretty clear, but
It's unfined, unfiltered, so there's a little cloudiness to it, which I
but
dig.
not a cloudy, crazy wine. All right, get your Schnazzola in the glass and give me your nose descriptors.
Well, again, it goes back to that the initial flavor or the initial aromatic that I'm picking up is that dusty earth. which for me is a beautiful attribute where it has that. There's a minerality to the wine in that way, so it gives it not just the flavors of bright fruit, which you do want. It's gamay.
Definitely red fruit, some cherry, strawberry, right?
Yeah.
There is that dust on it.
Which is really particular to the old vines. And we put some of this cuvée in the regular Juliana in 2017, so those characters still remain in the regular cuvée, but they're not as amplified.
Okay. Let's throw it over the tongue. No, we throw it over the tongue. We don't drink it.
Okay, do we say
but
something?
Tell me about mouthfeel. Tell me. I get acidity.
Definitely, acidity is
nice.
Acidity is there for the lift. It gives it body energy.
Immediate, very energetic.
Mm-hmm.
A medium.
A light to medium texture. Yeah.
Medium.
17 was still a rich vintage, so
medium negative, light to medium. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
Yeah.
But it's very fresh in the mouth. It's a nice mouthfeel, nice attack of acidity. All right, let's
and
taste
again, going
it.
back to the texture of white wine, so you have the
Yes.
smooth tannins. You're not looking for thick tannins or.
All right, let's taste it again and talk to me about the palate, and tell me if any of the nose descriptors obviously carry over to the palate. What do you get on the palate?
Same as stony minerality, but of stone, red fruit. You can say cherry, like bright cherry.
Yes,
like
not
dark
too bright.
Cherries. No, because Juliana is characteristic of the region also, or the village also, where you get wines that have darker fruit, but depending on where it's planted. If it's on the flatter ground, you start to get darker fruit aspects to it. But where the vines are for Côte de Bessay, where the parcel is, it's higher elevation, so it tends to stay cool with nice drainage, and it keeps.
There's something I'm getting.
It keeps it fresh.
There's something I'm getting on the mid palate, on the top of my mouth. It's not the fruit. I guess it's the stoniness or the minerality. It not that it separates, but it's there. I mean, I get the fruit, but there's something very distinct.
Yeah, I just always, going back to this wine, it's just a dustiness, almost like a.
I think that's what it is.
Like cigar box, you can sometimes
I think that's.
say.
I was thinking
spices,
tobacco, but not
tea notes.
Hardcore tobacco.
Yeah.
You know the elements of that.
Black tea.
Yeah, that's what it is. All those interesting notes.
Yeah, something other than fruit.
All right, so tell me, ideally, what a good food pairing with this is.
I think Beaujolais goes with everything. I have maybe not sea urchin, but everything else.
That's a great answer. I mean, that shows you how versatile. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But if you had to pick a couple of things that are a nice pairing.
You do traditional what's in the region also, where you would have for Beaujolais. Really, it's a culture of pork. So everywhere you go, there's saucisson. It's always like accompaniment of lots of cheese and different types of meat and
go well with all of that, right?
Charcuterie. It was really, if you step into anybody's home, this is what they're going to serve you, and it's what you get locally in the region, and especially in Lyon, there are these local restaurants that are called bouchons, and it's a place where you go and you eat and you drink, and traditionally you eat. And it's funny, the lightest, like, it's not a fish region whatsoever, which is why I eat much more vegetarian now and less fish. But the most traditional dish there is called a quenelle, and it's made from. It could be a range of fish, but it's basically like a puffy fish bread with a heavy crustacean cream sauce.
Really?
So that's like the fish course. So
what's it called?
If anyone, a quenelle, Quenelle.
Oh yeah. Lle.
Yeah.
Quenelle, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost.
So if you're trying to eat light in Beaujolais, it's not going to happen.
No, it's almost like a dumpling, right? A quenelle.
It's I don't know. It's like a squishy fish bread.
Yeah.
Now I love it. I love it.
Hard to find them in New York.
It took me a little while to get used to. I think the restaurant
La Granouille.
La Granouille. I'm not sure if they
have them.
They do. Okay.
They do. They're one of the last.
I went there one
places.
time. That was a trip.
That's a cool place.
It was a trip to the Upper East Side, not France.
So you're happy with the way
amazing.
this wine came out, right?
Yes, yeah, of course. Over time, you always tweak it here and there, but
and we talked about 15 as a vintage and 16.
16 was our first year, though, and it was also a ripe vintage.
No, I know, but just the vintages in the area.
But we know
but
there's one coming.
17 as a vintage was a good vintage to work with?
Yeah, it was quite cold too during harvest, so the conditions were nice where we don't chill the grapes, but it was naturally cold outside. And where
Perfect.
our winery, our home is, it's up in the mountains, so it stays cooler than the other zones. So for that, it was like a natural temperature control.
All right, one last question, and then we have to wrap up the show.
Oh no, I was having so much fun.
I told you it was going to go quickly. You have your property. You acquired some hectares.
Yeah.
Are you going to vinify those wines in a facility that you're going to build or have already?
We have our winery.
It's there now.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I wasn't sure.
With Lapierre, they were really just helping us out to get started, and then in 17 we bought our home,
you are,
and that's where the winery is.
Okay, so 17 was the first vintage
we
in
bought
your
equipment,
winery, and the 18's coming will be
also we're in our
very
winery.
nice.
So those ones are they're fermenting. Some of them this year are long ferments, and some of those wines are still ticking away the ferment. So, but while it's a little warmer in Beaujolais now, it's going.
I'm sure. All right. Michele, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Let me wrap up here.
Sam.
If you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's Sam at The Grape Nation. You could follow us on Facebook at The Grape Nation. Follow us on Instagram at the hashtag The Grape Nation and at SBenrubi, BenRubi. On Twitter, we're at BenRubi and the hashtag The Grape Nation. You can subscribe to Grape Nation Podcast now on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. As I mentioned earlier, we'll post Michele's wine list answers. We will give you specific information on the weekly wine sip, exactly what we drank, and any other wines that we mentioned we'll talk about. Michele, if we want to find you and David on social media and Domaine Chapelle, where do we look and go?
We have an Instagram. It's under Domaine Chapelle.
Okay, DOMAINECHAPEL.
Yes,
Domaine Chapelle.
Yes, yeah.
And you don't post. Do you do Instagram on your own?
Yes, I have one too. It's under my name, so Michele.a.smith.
Okay.
And then I post some Beaujolais photos.
You know what? I looked up David. He doesn't do a lot of
no,
Instagram.
He doesn't use it. He uses the Domaine Chapelle a bit. But no, not too much.
And if people want to find out more about the Domaine, do you have a website?
We do. It's not very extensive at this point.
Okay.
But anybody can write me a message on Instagram, and I'm happy to.
Okay.
To talk.
All right. I want to thank our guest, Michele Smith-Chapelle from Domaine Chapelle. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for the insight into Beaujolais.
I feel so good to be back in New York.
Sort of an insight into starting up, a winery in a very established region. So thank you, and thank you for bringing the wine in. Thanks to our engineers and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam BenRubi, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.